Good afternoon. I wanted today to talk about one more tool you can have in your toolbox as far as wrist prehab, rehab, and development goes, both in your hand balancing training, your acrobatics training, and anything else you do that might use a lot of wrist strength or that might give you sore wrists. So this is the Jump Stretch Compression Band. I bought this from Dick Hartzell at the Arnold a few years ago. They sell these online. I know Rogue Fitness also sells a similar product. I think it's called the Voodoo Floss Band. There's a ghetto variation as well where you can use the tire from a bike inner tube, or sorry, the inner tube from a bike tire. And it doesn't last as long, but it still creates a similar effect. I mean, I've had this one for probably, I want to say 5 or 6 years, and it's a little bit dirty, but it's still basically the same as the day I bought it. So really versatile piece of equipment. It has many more uses than just wrists, but that's what I want to talk about today. And as far as traveling, this is super easy to travel with, so there's a lot of convenience there. So what this does for the wrist, it's going to be a threefold series of benefits. Number one, it's going to provide a strengthening element because it locks the wrist in place. So any movement you do requires a considerable effort from the forearm flexors and extensors. That's number one. Number two, it gets, depending on how tight you wrap it or how much you move and stretch, it gets a little bit into your soft tissue adhesions. And then number three, which I think is the most important, is it momentarily cuts off the blood flow, but then after you take it off, it opens the floodgates basically. All the blood rushes in, the joint warms up, so it feels amazing. It's not something I use every day necessarily, but on those days when my wrists feel really stiff or I really need something to get my wrists moving, maybe on a day that it's colder, it is something that I use. It's just as well anytime I tweak something, this is one of my first kind of lines of defense in bringing it back to where it was. So what I'm going to do is unwrap it first. Okay, so I'm going to grab one end, pinch grip with the thumb, and you want to put a good amount of tension in this band. If it's too tight, that's not a good thing either, but if it's too loose, you'll literally get none of the benefits. So good grip, and I'm not just wrapping it, I'm giving a little bit of stretch and then wrap it. So every time I'm going to stretch and wrap. As you can see, it's not super tight. It's not like, I wouldn't call it a tourniquet, but the goal is to cut off some of the blood flow. I'm going to go about halfway up the forearm. I'm going to go a little bit ways up the wrist. So the first thing it's doing is it's blocking the wrist from moving, right? The wrist is stuck basically, so if I either extend or flex or go up and down, move in a circle, there's a lot more work going on in the forearm than just moving it. So there is a strengthening aspect. As the wrist is working, more blood wants to get in, but it can't. And as you can see, my hand is already starting to change color. So if your hand loses feeling or starts to tingle, you can take it off, but you should be able to do a minute or two. So what I'm going to do is just move the hand around. I'm going to open and close the hand, and this is getting into the soft tissues in my wrist flexors. I can't open my hand fully here because it's blocking it, but what I can do is take the fingers and just gently stretch it, get into it as well. Up and down, I can add some squeezes, and yeah, you can see a little bit difference in coloration now. I'm going to keep going just a little bit, and there's a point where it starts to tingle that it's like, okay, it's enough. So I'm going to take it off. And then you can see what happens to this joint. So after I take it off, I'm just going to shake everything out, make sure it's good, and you can see now it's starting to flush. You can see how red everything's starting to turn. So this right hand is now a good deal warmer than my left. This wrist already feels more flexible. It feels like I'm ready to grip something. So it's a very quick way to warm up your wrist on those days where it feels like it doesn't want to warm up. So again, very valuable tool to have in your arsenal. It's not expensive. If you get one, it lasts you for years. So it's a very small investment for something that can have a really big impact on how your joints feel. Just as well, tomorrow I'm flying out to Australia for the next 5 weeks or so. I'm doing a series of workshops in Perth, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Sydney. So if you guys are living in Australia and interested in learning from me, check out my website or my Facebook for more details. And if you're not following my Facebook as well, I post a lot of tips and a lot of shorter videos on there as well. So that's something that I would recommend doing if you like the content I'm posting. But I hope this is helpful, and good luck in your training.